Let's talk about this rail strike. So a rail strike could happen in the United States, which would all but cripple the economy that is already crippled enough. What it would do to gasoline prices, food shortages, awful. So this issue at hand revolves around sick leave, okay? Railway workers do not want to deal. They don't want to put a deal on the table unless it includes paid sick leave. And that is left out of the deal that was negotiated back in September. Do you remember when the Biden administration kind of averted that rail strike back in September? And they're like, we got it averted. We're coming to the table. We got a deal. Well, okay. Sick leave, paid sick leave was a big piece of that. These guys work their asses off for Americans, right? They do the hard work so that you get gasoline, you get fuel, you get food. And often in the middle of the night, they're just called randomly to come into work. They can't take vacations, which brings an issue to the forefront. Did you know that the United States is the only developed nation without federally guaranteed sick leave? And when you think of jobs that one could really not go sick to, you might think doctors, surgeons, bus drivers, and of course, rail workers. Their work is incredibly dangerous. Do you want them with a double ear infection like Natalie has right now, like running our rail infrastructure, like woozy on like NyQuil? No, you want them resting. You want them getting better to do their job effectively. Do you want your pilots sick? Here's a question. If you knew your pilot had the flu and was like really lightheaded and dizzy and didn't feel well, would you want that? Would you get on a plane with that pilot? No, you wouldn't. And the same thing goes with our rail infrastructure in the United States. If they feel sick, they shouldn't have to mess around with how they can take paid sick leave. But currently they do, and they've been fighting to change this for decades to no avail. Not just months or years, decades they've been looking for this. Now Congress has taken this into its own hands to stop unions from negotiating or striking anymore. Way to go, Congress. Can't strike, can't unionize, can't get that paid sick leave. So President Biden asked Congress to take this up, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi got right on it. Just moments ago, the House voted in favor of doing this. Here's the tweet from President Biden. I'm calling on Congress to pass legislation immediately to adopt the tentative agreement between railroad workers and operators. Let me be clear. He loves saying that. Let me be clear. So I wonder where John Pierre gets that from. A rail shutdown would devastate our economy. Without freight rail, many U.S. industries would shut down. As a proud pro-labor president, I'm reluctant to override the ratification procedures and views of those who voted against the agreement. But in this case, where the economic impact of a shutdown would hurt millions, I believe Congress must use its powers to adopt this deal. Oh. Pro-union president. I want to be the most pro-union president ever. Go ahead, Philip.
We need a word that describes when you're forced to go to work against your will. Like when you don't want to, like the conditions aren't right, you don't want to, and then you're forced to. We need a word for that kind of like when you have no choice but to go to work.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm
trying to think. I'll write Webster's and see if they know anything.
Slavery?
Forced labor?
Slabbery? How about slabbery? No, that doesn't work.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll write to Webster and see if they have anything.
That's exactly what this is. Union leaders are upset because they are only using this tool they have available, the only tool they have available, which is striking. The government would, in essence, be stepping in to tell them that they have to take what is given and no longer advocate for themselves. There's precedence for this because in 1991, Congress passed a bill in the late of night under the darkness of Washington. And they had to wake up then President Bush to sign it at 1 a.m. Here is from the New York Times from April of 1991. Mr. Bush signed the bill at 1:39 a.m. after being awakened in the residential quarters of the White House, a spokesman said. The president was expected to issue a statement later today. Samuel Skinner, the transportation secretary, said Mr. Bush had asked that he be awakened to sign the measure, which would immediately send the strikers back to work. Mr. Skinner called the measure a resolution everyone can live with. The unions have said they would abide by the legislation. That ended a 19-hour strike where the workers, again, were asking for more flexible time off. So back in 1991 under George H.W. Bush, not even George W. Bush, goes back that far. So why are that's hard to say. Why are rail workers threatening to strike? Well, take a look at this screen. Union representing tens of thousands of workers said they planned to strike if a labor agreement with the freight rail companies employing them wasn't reached. The workers are mostly concerned with their grueling, unpredictable schedules that make it difficult to attend medical visits or family events. Yeah, you want to go to a wedding? Screw you. You can't plan for that. Oh, you're going to be the best man in that person's wedding? Screw you. Because you literally might be on your way to the wedding and you get a call and you have to go in. You're forced to go in. Slavery. What was that in the proposal under the agreement? New contracts would include a 24% increase in wages over 5 years and a payout of $11,000 upon ratification. Workers would also receive an additional paid day off, as well as the ability to attend medical appointments without penalty. Well, this only lasted about a year because another strike loomed in 1992. And Congress had to vote to intervene. Let's take a look at who voted for this. For Congress to intervene in that instance. Oh, who's that?
Hey,
the people that voted against it.
I recognize that name.
I recognize that nay on the list. Is that Biden down there? I can't see too good. Is that Bill? Is that Joe Biden over there on that list? My spectacles aren't working so good. Is that Biden on that list that voted no? And why did he do that? Well, this is what Biden said in 1992. I'll put on my 1992 voice, like I'm a PBS documentary. Mr. President, I will oppose this legislation. As I do so, I would like to make it clear my concern that Congress is once again being called upon to settle a rail strike, and in particular this one. For 4 long years, this dispute has remained unresolved. That is far too long for me to believe that labor and management could not reach an agreement. But the conditions under which those negotiations took place led our nation inexorably to the strike and lockout. For nearly 20 years, every working day I have traveled from Wilmington to Washington and back to Wilmington on the train. The vast majority of the American public has only become aware of the depth of the differences between rail labor and management in the last few days. I have witnessed a slow but relentless deterioration of those relations in recent years. It has been a painful development to see, particularly since it could have been avoided. And young Tad Lincoln slept in the White House as Abraham was shot.
Well, I think if you're going to do it a true 90s voice, you should have done it in like just a really crappy rap.
I was trying to do my Ken Burns, my Ken Burns documentary voice. Mr. President,
it was good.
I can't stand on this hallowed ground any longer and watch our nation be ripped apart. He did not believe that Congress should take this up and choose the winner and loser, but that is exactly what they're doing in this situation. Choosing who wins, namely the rail companies, and who loses, namely the workers, of course. So while Congress is drafting a bill that would end the strike, meaning you're done fighting, stop fighting, go back to work, Senator Bernie Sanders is proposing a separate bill that would guarantee rail workers a minimum of 7 sick days per year. You can see how he can easily get burned on this, right? Congress may just pass the one that ends the strike and leaves out the sick days. We don't know what's going to happen. Like his version, the Bernie version. And I love how Bernie is suddenly stepping up here. Like Bernie, like every year and a half, he like kind of stands up for something, and then he falls. Like
I'm gonna put my neck out on the line because I think I can get you 6 more days.
So I'm gonna do that. Got 6 more days here. Okay, we're gonna pass this. Where were you on all these other bills, Bernie? Where were you voting against the war in Ukraine? So Bernie Sanders spoke to Chris Hayes about this, his favorite, because now that Rachel Maddow's not on. And he did not mention the possibility that this might happen. He says he thinks there is a reasonable chance, but even he doesn't look too convinced. Watch Bernie.
Meanwhile, for workers on the railroads, they have underlined zero guaranteed sick leave. In other words, somebody comes down with COVID tomorrow. they're going to get penalized because they don't come into work. Somebody is having a baby, can't go to their wife's side. So what we are fighting for, and I think we stand a reasonable chance to succeed, is to take the agreement that the President and Labor Secretary negotiated and add 7 days of paid sick leave, guaranteed sick leave to that. And what I'm hearing is not only is that going to be taken up in the House tomorrow, I'm hearing that there's strong, or at least some, Republican support for it in the Senate.
The rail companies say that these workers do have paid sick leave, but it's parsed. They're not guaranteed pay, and they could be penalized in other ways, such as taking these days from other time off allotments. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, private sector workers receive 7 to 8 sick days per year per leave, but these guys, but not these guys, which deliver pretty much everything you need to live your life to your doors and to your stores. Here's a piece of video that works together that the rail workers put together to show why they voted against this deal in order to hold out for sick leave. Watch this.
I voted no on the contract because we deserve more.
It does not meet the requirements for quality of life that we need. We need time to sleep. We need time to rest. We need time to enjoy our lives. We don't have any of that now.
We're considered essential employees, and we don't have a single paid sick day to use when we're off. We've worked through the pandemic. We were considered essential, and now it seems like we're expendable.
If a person is sick, they shouldn't have to use all of their paid days that they had to earn the previous year before to take a day off.
We're constantly coming to work sick and exhausted.
We routinely work 14 hours and longer every day.
Can you imagine? A lot of this is made worse by the fact that the rail companies have reduced the workforce by nearly 30%, or 45% of employees in the last 6 years in favor of something called precision scheduled railroading. It means that they can send cars that are not full instead of long trains in order to keep products moving, and then they run more often. We already know that the House voted to approve both the end of the strike and the 7-day paid sick leave time requirement. The House has to do the same, and then the president has to sign it. If nothing is passed or agreed upon, then the strikes will begin on December 9th. They estimate that a rail strike could cost the economy $2 billion per day, because these are just a few of the things that would fall out and you wouldn't have them on the trains. Look at this. Retail product shortages. This would be the $2 billion. Lost jobs, widespread plant shutdowns. I mean, think about all the people that rely on the rail infrastructure to get to their job. Higher costs for consumers and businesses, more trucks on the highway, more CO2 in the air. Disruptions to hundreds of thousands of daily commuter and Amtrak trips. So according to the Association of American Railroads, here's how much of what you eat actually comes from the rails. Farm products. If it's on your table or in your pantry, there's a good chance railroads helped get it there. Rail cars haul around 16 million carloads and intermodal units of wheat, corn, soybeans, agricultural products, plus another 1.5 million units of animal feed, beer, birdseed, canned produce, corn syrup, flour, French fries, frozen chicken, sugar, wine, countless other food products. 6,300 carloads daily of food from farm products, hundreds more intermodal containers and trailers. The average rail car of wheat is enough to make 260,000 loaves of bread. 36,000 chickens.
I wouldn't be bragging about the corn syrup and stuff like that.
No.
Like,
maybe leave that off your list.
Yeah.
Corn syrup. But maybe the Biden administration wants to avoid what happened during the largest rail strike in U.S. history, which was in 1922, which lasted months. 400,000 workers went on strike. So the workers brought in 300,000 strike breakers to fill the positions. Guarded by the National Guard and the United States Marshal Service, striking workers sabotaged trains, air hoses were cut, switches were misapplied, and car journals, part of the axle assembly, were sanded. The cut air hoses were dangerous because the hoses weren't cut all the way through, so they burst when the trains tried to brake. Before that, the largest rail strike in 1887, there was even a union present to represent these workers. And this is from Harper's Weekly illustration because there was no photos back then of that rail strike at the time. So you can see the illustration here. The strike was also called the Great Upheaval. Over 100,000 workers participated for 52 days. And by the time it was over, 1,000 people had gone to jail. Some 100 had been killed. Workers burned down the train station, railroad bridges, and fought back by the National Guard. Both of these historic strikes followed economic depressions, by the way, when working people were at their limit. They were already at their limit, which is what we're in right now. You could draw a parallel to how the people feel today and hope we don't get that far down the road, but they haven't fixed this. The point is, you have to, back to 1877, we're still dealing with this stuff. Help these people, for crying out loud. And and here's what bothers me enough. I'll just say this. When people want to say, no, these guys, we can't afford this right now. Oh yeah. So we can't account for $20 billion in Ukraine. We can't find $20 billion we just sent to Ukraine. We also have now sent arguably over $106 billion to a corrupt government in Europe. So we can't help these people. It's unbelievable. And the outrage is just, it's so quiet. You just don't hear anything about it. We hear from these railroad workers, and it's just awful. It breaks my heart to hear this stuff.
Well, I wonder because so let's play devil's advocate a bit, but let's say Congress votes and says, no, you have to go back to work. And the rail workers say, no, we're going on strike. Then is it the National Guard going to take over running the railways? As what are they going to do then? Because it's like Congress really doesn't have any teeth in this because they can't physically, they're not going to physically force people to go back. So they still have the ability to strike.
Yeah.
It's just would be illegal.
I don't know. I don't know what they would do. You can't have it like, is it going to be like the airline workers, and Ronald Reagan like calling their bluff as president and then like fires them all. He replaces them with his own. These are skilled workers. Like, you can find these people that know how to do all of these jobs on the railways and take care of the infrastructure. It's not something you just learn overnight. Get some moron off the street that can figure this out, right? These are skilled laborers who understand this. They were deemed essential workers during the pandemic, and this is how we screw them over. I was talking to Natalie. You guys see that video, that photo that went viral? I think we showed it here on the show a few weeks ago of that coal miner. He came to watch his son's basketball game. I think it was in West Virginia.
Yeah, I've seen that. And
the photo went viral. It was either Kentucky or West Virginia. And it went viral because he was covered in coal dust, and he was there in his overalls and stuff, and he had like dark dust around his eyes, and he was sitting there with his boy watching he went to his school to be at the basketball game right from work. And I think the reason that it touched so many people is because, these are the people that help, make this country run. They do the work so that you can live your life. And they're on the backbones of these people. And this is how we reward them. And yet we send billions of dollars to Ukraine. We can't help these people. It's absolutely disgusting. GCR in our chat says, thank you, Redacted, for covering the railway strike. I work for a Class 1 railroad as a conductor. I'm also an engineer. You have no idea how bad it has gotten since the implementation of PSR. I'm sorry. Well, thank you for what you do. And I hope that they fix this. These corrupt politicians. They spend half the time focused on this. We better off.